What's up everyone, I'm Kyle, and in this week's Python programming tutorial, we're going to be learning all about how to use libraries in your Python code. In last week's tutorial, we learned all about all kinds of cool functions and types that are inherently built into Python that make your Python programs that much cooler and more powerful. Now we're going to be learning about what's not built into Python, and this is really where Python's main advantage comes in over other programming languages, is that it allows you to import libraries. So when you're designing a programming language, as you could probably imagine, it's impossible to program in every possible function, feature, utility, object that's out there, like literally impossible. Thankfully, Python had the foresight to allow us to import libraries, so other Python users can contribute different objects, functions, etc., and put them in as libraries that now you can import into your own projects and use. So there are simple things like the math library, the time library, or more complicated things like the tkinter library, matplotlib library. There are just so many out there, and I encourage you to go look up a list. I can't list them all because there's just so many. Now, of course, I promise you I won't make a glob go gob glob reference with all this talk of libraries. I just don't want to pollute your brain cells like that. And before we go down that rabbit hole, let's just get started with libraries right away, shall we? Let's get cracking with some libraries. So importing a library into your Python code is super easy. All you really need to do is at the very top of your program, write the keyword import, and then put the name of the library that you wish to import. So for example, a library that you might use very often is the time library. And this is good for using time control, like waiting a certain number of seconds in your program. So if you want to see what that looks like, I can make a quick while loop, right? And then all of the functions and methods that are defined within time are at your disposal. So I can say print a, so, and then we can make it wait for 1 second. So I can say time.sleep, and you can see after I've started typing the name of the library, it recognizes a whole bunch of different methods that are contained within that library. So I want the sleep one, and I can put a 1 in here. So now I've made a infinite loop that prints the letter A in my terminal once per second. And you can of course go through like the documentation of the library to find out all kinds of functions that are included in there. So, but this is one of the things that you might end up using the time library for. The other thing you can do is you can rename libraries. So let's say I'm just so incredibly lazy and I think the 4 characters of time are too much to type. I can use the as keyword to rename it as something. So now I'm importing time as t. So next time I reference time in my program to retrieve one of its methods, it's not called time anymore, it's called t. And as you can see, as I type t, it now recognizes that t is the time module, and it sees all of the methods within that. So if we try running that again, you'll see it'll do just the same exact thing. All I've done is I've renamed time under a different name. Another library that is extremely useful in Python is the math library. And this is especially true because Python's native math functions are really quite weak. It only does basic arithmetic, so things like plus, minus, multiplication, and division. But when you import the math library, now you have all kinds of things at your fingertips. So I'm going to import math as m, and we're going to play around with some of the stuff that we have. So I'm going to want to print to the terminal so we can see what we're doing, and I can say m dot square root, which is abbreviated sqrt in the math library, of 16. And when I run that, we can see that it prints 4. So basically, you can see what I've done: imported math, renamed it m, and now I can access all of the methods that are within there. So things like square root. I can also use cosine, sine, all of the trigonometric functions that are just really awesome. So I can say that the tangent of 45, and I think it's in radians by default, so it won't give us a very pretty looking number. Yep, and then it gives us the tangent of whatever 45 radians happens to be. And so yeah, that's pretty much how you use the math library, and there are all kinds of methods contained in there. Like I said, look up the documentation for a complete list. There's just way too many for me to list in this video. One more cool thing I can show you how to do is that if you want to import only a specific function from the math library, so you don't need the entire library sitting around. Let's say I only want to use the cosine function, right? So I can say from math, so using the from keyword instead, import cosine. Now the only function from math that I can access is the cosine function. So if I try to run this tan here, it yells at me and says, hey, this is not, oh, it also yells at me because I have not renamed. So let's make sure the name is consistent, but this should still throw an error because it doesn't realize that math, well, first of all, it doesn't realize that math is a thing because we've only imported the cosine from it. But now, whenever I want to use cosine in my program, I don't even need to call it as a math method. I could just straight up pull out cosine and say I want the cosine of 20, and it will go right ahead and give you that cosine of 20. And so this is how you bypass needing to use the math dictionary, like renaming it and stuff. And this is useful if you only want either one function out of a library or just a handful of them. Thank you for watching my tutorial this week. If you haven't already, be sure to check out my book. It's called Building Smart LEGO Mindstorm's EV3 Robots, and it's now available on Amazon. If you found this tutorial helpful, be sure to subscribe to my channel to get more tutorials like this every Thursday. And if you have an idea for a tutorial, leave it in the comments section below. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.